Good evening, it's 10 o'clock. I'm Matt Barbett and this is Sky News at 10. Our top story. A cabinet minister tells Sky News that Reform UK is whipping up anger and stoking tensions over asylum hotels. The Chinese president welcomes his Russian and Indian counterparts for an economic summit overshadowed by US trade wars. Greta Thunberg and her fellow activists set sail for Gaza again 12 weeks after they were detained by the Israeli military for doing the same thing. An investigation is launched into websites selling sex work with concerns about the exploitation of trafficked and vulnerable women. The former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani is rushed to hospital after being injured in a car crash. And a wonder goal secures all 3 points for Premier League champions Liverpool against title rivals Arsenal. Plus, we'll be taking a first look at tomorrow's front pages in our press preview from 10:30. Good evening. A cabinet minister has told Sky News that Reform UK is whipping up anger and stoking tensions over asylum hotels. The Education Secretary, Bridget Phillipson, said Nigel Farage is not interested in solving the problem, echoing the comments of the Archbishop of York. As protests continue across the country, Reform's deputy leader told us that Ms Phillipson's comments were ridiculous and the Church of England should stay out of politics. Our chief political correspondent, John Craig, has more.
Sunday protests spread to several towns and cities as demonstrators continued to pile pressure on the government to close migrant hotels. Nigel Farage was accused of provoking anger by a cabinet minister who also backed Home Office lawyers who argued in the Epping Forest Court of Appeal hearing that the public interests of asylum seekers and local people are not equal.
It is about a balance of rights. When people come to this country and claim asylum, we have a responsibility as a government to assess their cases and to process them. But Nigel Farage and Reform, they don't actually want to sort this problem. It is in their interest. They think their political interests are served by whipping up anger rather than fixing problems.
Mr Farage's plan for mass deportations was also attacked by the Archbishop of York.
Mr Farage is saying the things he's saying, but he is not offering any long-term solution to the big issues which are convulsing our world, which lead to this.
But Reform UK's deputy leader told the Archbishop to stay out of politics.
I'm a Christian. I enjoy the church. I believe in God. But no, the role of the Archbishop is not actually to interfere with international migration policies.
In Crawley, West Sussex, on a showery Sunday afternoon, there were protesters for and against asylum seekers.
We're trying to make our voices heard peacefully. We don't want any trouble, but no one's listening.
No hate, no fear. Refugees are welcome here.
Unfortunately, I think the government at the moment is appeasing the far right in Britain.
MPs are returning to Westminster after a break of nearly 6 weeks. While government statements on Ukraine and Gaza are expected, the domestic agenda is certain to be dominated by the migration crisis. So we can also expect an early statement from Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, as well as moves by the Conservatives to tighten the laws on deportations and migrant hotels. The government is claiming the number of small boat arrivals for August will be the lowest since 2019. But that won't stop the protests. John Craig, Sky News.
John joins me now from Westminster, but first let's speak to Emma Birchley, our correspondent who's in Epping for us this evening. Emma, that's been the focal point of a lot of protests in recent weeks, of course. What's been happening there today?
Well, the protest was due to start at 6 o'clock, but actually by then there were probably already 50 or so people here, and it was all very peaceful. They were waving flags. There was a little flurry of tension as people arrived with flares at about 6:15. They were shouting, "Send them back." But then it all calmed down when they were sent behind the barriers, and there was singing of Sweet Caroline, beeping of horns as cars went past. At 7 o'clock, they then headed a mile up the road to the council offices. There were shouts of "Shame on you." There was a tension, bit of pushing and shoving with the police. And that was when the first of 3 arrests were made. Now, the police have made it very clear that actually it wasn't because she had unfurled a union flag on the steps of the council offices. It was in fact because she'd breached a Section 14 order. That places restrictions on exactly where the protests can be held. That didn't include the civic centre. So that was arrest number 1. There was also another arrest of a man because he'd refused to leave at the end of the protest. It should have finished at 8 o'clock. And then a third arrest on suspicion of inciting racial hatred in relation to an incident that was said to have happened on Friday here in Epping. So I think it's important to give the context of all of this. There have been protests in Epping throughout the summer. In the middle of July, there was the alleged assault on a schoolgirl. That's going through the courts at the moment. He's denied that, but it caused a lot of protest. Then there was that High Court ruling, that temporary injunction that should have meant, in theory, week on Friday, everyone should have been gone from here, all 138 people. But then that was overruled in the Court of Appeal, and so now we're seeing this flaring up of protests. There were 3 arrests here on Friday. 2 people have been charged. The 3 arrests here today, and then further protests elsewhere. There were 5 arrests in West Drayton near Heathrow yesterday. All sorts of protests today. Many of them were peaceful, but also one at Canary Wharf, 4 arrests there, a policeman allegedly punched in the face. So you can tell that it is really gaining momentum again, and this headache for the government is certainly not going away.
Well, let's speak to John about that, who's in Westminster. John, as you mentioned in your piece, MPs back tomorrow after the summer recess. The government may have had a different agenda in mind, but this is going to dominate, isn't it?
Well, after his summer holiday in Croatia, yes, we know it's Croatia because the Croatian Prime Minister tweeted about meeting Sir Keir Starmer in the seaside resort of Opatija. The Prime Minister will, during the day 1 of the new parliamentary term, hope to take part in a radio phone-in where he's bound to be asked about the migrant crisis. Tony Blair used to call those sort of things his masochism strategy. About the same time, we're expecting Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, to make a statement to MPs. She will hope to launch a fight back, really, after all the dreadful headlines of the summer. She'll get a tough time from the opposition, obviously, but there'll be concerns from a lot of Labour MPs too, who are very worried and believe that the government's not moving fast enough to close down the hotels, worried about the threat from Reform UK. Then, in the House of Lords, the Tories are planning to table and force a vote on an amendment to the Planning and Infrastructure Bill. Now, what they want to do is force the Home Office to consult local authorities before hotels are converted to hotels for asylum seekers, make it part of the planning application process. Now, Labour say this is rank hypocrisy from the Tories because during the COVID crisis in 2020, the Immigration Minister, a certain Chris Philp, who's now the Shadow Home Secretary, wrote to Council suspending that very provision and, according to Labour, never restored it when the pandemic ended. Then later in the week, on Wednesday, the Tories have an Opposition Day debate in the House of Commons when they are going to put forward what they call their deportation bill, and that's got a lot of proposals similar to those of Reform. Deport anyone who arrives in the country illegally, annual cap on migration, disapply the Human Rights Act in immigration and so on. It'll also be the first Prime Minister's questions of the new term on Wednesday, so Starmer versus Badenoch. The first one for 7 weeks. The last one was back on July the 16th.
John and Emma as well, many thanks indeed. Next, China's President Xi Jinping has rolled out the red carpet for Russia's Vladimir Putin and India's Narendra Modi. They're among the leaders gathering for a key economic summit. And while Mr. Putin is seen as the star guest, Mr. Modi's attendance carries particular significance. It is the Indian Prime Minister's first visit to China in 7 years and comes just days after the US imposed 50% tariffs on Indian goods. Our Asia correspondent Helen Ann Smith reports now from Tianjin.
At a fractious time for the world, this was quite the statement. A collection of powers convened by China. Part of what some are calling a new axis of upheaval. One by one, leaders lined up to greet President Xi, 26 in total. But there was no question about who was the guest of honor here. Vladimir Putin got a lingering conversation, a right-hand position for the pictures. It felt a bit like the others were simply trailing along as they headed on in to have dinner. But the welcome banquet was also designed to place the host front and center, his vision as well as his message, his guests listening on.
Guided by the Shanghai spirit, let us set out again from Tianjin and embark on a new and promising journey towards a brighter future.
Putin's presence will be the headline grabber here. His war in Ukraine drags on. So does his reluctance to make peace. China clearly still has his back. But for the host, this summit is wide-reaching. A forum to discuss security. A platform to promote its credentials.
It is only day one of what is going to be a huge week here in China, but for many here, it will already be seen as a success. China is showing the world that it has the ability to convene nations. It has the ability to provide global leadership, and it has the ability to provide alternatives at a time where many see America as increasingly unreliable.
And if there was ever proof that that strategy is working, it is this: the presence of India's Narendra Modi. They share a bitter border dispute, intense regional rivalry, and lately a distaste for Donald Trump and his tactics.
Based on mutual trust, respect and sensitivity, we are committed to take our relations forward.
Trump has levied tariffs of 50% on India. They say he is the reason they're here.
With Donald Trump coming in and telling us who we should be friends with and how we should be conducting our business and with whom should we be conducting our business, I think he has created an impetus for us to look for other friends and cultivate relationships that we might not have been keen on repairing.
A cultural show rounded off the evening. Soft power tactics to mask a rock-hard political message about China and its ability to lead. Helen Ann Smith, Sky News in Tianjin.
12 weeks ago, Greta Thunberg and a yacht full of other activists were detained by Israel's military as they attempted to break the naval blockade of Gaza. Today, many of those who were on board set off to make the same journey again, aiming to deliver food and humanitarian supplies to the Strip. Thousands of supporters gathered in Barcelona to see the ships leave. Our Europe correspondent Siobhan Robbins was there as well.
Is the largest mission of its kind. A flotilla of boats leaving Barcelona, trying to get aid to Gaza. More than 20 vessels carrying people from 44 countries, including campaigner Greta Thunberg.
The story here is about Palestine. The story here is how people are being deliberately deprived of the very basic means to survive. And the story here is how the world can be silent and how those in power, those who are supposed to represent us, are in every possible way betraying and failing Palestinians and all oppressed peoples of the world.
Adding his support, Game of Thrones actor Liam Cunningham, who told the story of a little girl called Fatima, who he says died this week.
Lovely voice, huh? The reason she's singing the song is because she wanted it sung at her funeral. Excuse me. She wanted it sung at her funeral. This is a 5 or 6 year old kid who's making her funeral arrangements, her own funeral arrangements. What sort of a world are we living in?
Despite their passion and determination, this flotilla is likely doomed to fail. Israeli forces intercepted the last one that tried in June, deporting those on board. And as the boats left, the IDF said the blockade would be enforced.
The activists know the chance of them getting the aid in their flotilla to Gaza is slim, but that is just part of their mission. What they're really hoping to do is mobilise millions of people around the world to show their support for Palestine.
If the crowd in Barcelona was anything to go by, the plan seems to be working. Among them, Gazan refugee Ola and her family, who managed to get out a month ago to get medical help here in Spain. When we left Gaza, the situation was so dire. We left at the peak of bombing and destruction. It was so dire. There is starvation, no food, no drink, she says. As the boats begin their mission towards her home, Israel continues to deny people are starving or that aid is being blocked. It's unclear how far the flotilla will get, but those on board say they can't stay silent on Gaza. Siobhan Robbins, Sky News, Barcelona.
Meanwhile, Israel's government claims it has killed a Hamas spokesperson in a targeted strike on Gaza. Hamas hasn't confirmed Abu Ubaida's death in the strike yesterday, but the Hamas-run health ministry in Gaza says at least 88 people have been killed in Israeli attacks in the past 24 hours, with more than 400 people injured. The former New York City Mayor, Rudy Giuliani, has been hospitalised following a car crash in the state of New Hampshire. According to his spokesperson, the 81-year-old was struck from behind yesterday evening and has fractured his vertebrae, but he's said to be in good spirits. He's expected to be released from hospital in a few days. A boy who died at a playground in Cheshire has been named as Logan Carter. The 12-year-old suffered fatal injuries at Wharton Recreation Ground in Winsford on Friday. His family said he made every day worth living and will be missed more than they can ever put into words. The UK's Anti-Slavery Commissioner has launched an investigation into adult and sex work websites over the exploitation of trafficked and vulnerable women. It follows a report by Sky News, which raised serious concerns about how traffickers may be using the platforms to advertise and abuse their victims. Sky's Dan Whitehead has more.
Forced into sex work and sold online against their will, trafficked victims and the websites that host their adverts are the focus of a new investigation by the Independent Anti-Slavery Commissioner.
Last year alone in the UK, there were over 5,000 women and girls who were identified as victims of sexual exploitation. And we know that's likely to be just the tip of the iceberg. They're the women that we've managed to identify. In fact, this number has been rising year on year, and part of the issue has been that the online world has made it easier for criminals and traffickers to identify and sell those victims of sexual exploitation online.
Those victims will be interviewed as part of this investigation. In June, Sky News spoke to one woman who'd been sexually exploited. Sarah, not her real name, arrived in the UK on a youth mobility visa, but she was soon listed online for sexual services.
The man was there to greet me, and one of the very first things he did was ask me to hand over my passport to check that I had the right to work. I remember him taking me into another room within his flat and closing the door behind him and then locking the door, and then I was raped.
Exploitation signs online include phone numbers being used across multiple profiles with different photos, ages and locations. New laws in the UK mean websites have a duty to report these cases to police, but there are concerns they aren't being enforced properly. In a statement, Ofcom told Sky News the UK's Online Safety Act requires sites and apps to protect people from illegal content, including facilitating the sexual exploitation of adults and human trafficking. We're closely scrutinising companies' compliance with their duties.
We've just got this environment that is not conducive to the protection of women, girls and children more broadly. And we urgently need to look at our laws and make sure they're fit for purpose.
The Commissioner will interview victims throughout September. A report is due later this year. Dan Whitehead, Sky News.
Charities say they've been filling the gap for free school meals during the holidays as families continue to struggle with the rising cost of groceries. New research from the Felix project reveals that 2/3 of teachers expected children in their class to go hungry over the summer. Our education reporter Anjum Pirbakos has more on this now.
For kids, the summer holiday season means time off school. But for many families, it poses a dilemma. How to feed the children when the free school meals stop. Richard is a dad, and he told us what the summer holidays have been like for him and his family. He wanted to remain anonymous.
The two main ones are the breakfast and your lunch. You're probably looking at a good sort of 3 to 4 meals extra than you wouldn't necessarily have.
Come on into the chillers. The Felix project redistributes food from companies who donate goods they can't use, helping families that are struggling. Charities such as these are helping plug the gap left over the holiday period.
More and more working families are finding themselves struggling to feed their children, so more and more of them are having to turn to food banks and holiday activities where their children can be fed. So numbers are increasing every year.
Families are having to find different ways to make ends meet.
The children, they've done a drive sale on, they got rid of a load of their old toys.
And what did you use the money for once you sold those things?
So some of it was just the groceries, and then sometimes it's that thing where you just need that extra £10 on electric.
At the William Ford Junior School, food delivered by the Felix project will serve past and current pupils.
We have had a humongous number of parents in. We were only expecting to cater for about 50 families, but I would definitely say we've reached a greater community to the extent where we've had people bringing their elderly relatives along. We've had friends and families of neighbours, people bringing them along.
Many working families struggle to ask for help.
I do work. It's that I can't provide for my family enough, and having to admit that I need that help, but at the same time not wanting to sort of let everyone know that I'm struggling.
As the summer holidays draw to a close, parents across the country have had to make challenging choices, trying their best to ensure that their children don't go hungry. Anjum Pirbakos, Sky News.
A Department for Education spokesperson told us we've invested over £600 million into the Best Start holiday activities and food clubs, guaranteeing the long-term future of the programme for the first time since its launch, so it can provide activities and meals for children from low-income families. More widely, they continue, we're expanding free school meals to all children whose households are on universal credit and introducing free breakfast clubs in primary schools. Time now for the latest from Sky Sports News. Here's Gavin.
Staying connected is vital for business. Sky Business sponsors this report.
Sky Mobile sponsors the transfer window on Sky Sports News.
Right.
Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank was all smiles with his teammates today, but his future still seems somewhat uncertain.
Honest, I'm just sick and tired of this.
The number that was put before me was 50% more than our highest paid player at the time.
Jimmy had the feeling, do they really want me here?
My determination was not to sell Jimmy to that particular club.
It made me look bad in front of the fans. It was not necessary.
The biggest single challenge is how we managed his exit publicly, which probably Jimmy didn't like very much.
He's settling into his new surrounds. The player renamed Judas Floyd Money in the Bank when he was drummed out of Ellen Road.
Don't believe the figures at all. Don't believe the figures at all.
Reading the text last night, that was nothing about money from his agent. Well, Jesus, lads, honestly.
I just think he's greedy.
The perception that people have of me, the difficult person, blah, 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 never there. Sometimes things happen for a reason.
Another day, another summer signing. The delightfully named Gerald Floyd Hasselbank from Boa Vista. Jimmy to his pals.
Have you heard about people like Billy Bremner and Norman Hunter and things like that?
No.
You never heard of them?
No.
You'll find out about them.
Yeah, I will find out, but I never heard of them, no.
Now, they tell me you put Jimmy. They call you Jimmy and that's it, is that right?
Yes, they call me Jimmy in Portugal and that's it. I think in the beginning of the season I'm gonna learn about English football. But I want to make the best of it and score so much goals as possible.
Well, he finished second top goal scorer in Portugal, so he looks as if he's a finisher, which we were lacking goals last season. We'd been out to look at Bruno Ribeiro. We signed Bruno Ribeiro and Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank. It was £2 million and he was an unknown. And you think to yourself, is that money well spent? Nobody had heard of him.
George Graham said to me, we've got to go down to Lisbon on the Sunday because we were going to watch this player. The player was Jimmy Hasselbank. I remember seeing him in a very run-down, low-key stadium. You knew straight away, there's something there.
And I remember looking at the back of a bus. I was looking and going, who are them two? Because it said the new attack line for, as I said, the men in white. And they said, who are they? And I remember looking, and it was a picture of me and Jimmy. On the thing, I was like, oh my God. It took a while to adjust, but everyone saw he had one thing on his mind, and that was to score goals.
Hasselbank, who loves to hit them when he gets the chance. And he's steered it into the net for the equaliser. Hasselbank, who has a crack and scores!
Good effort! It's gone in! Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank has scored!
Oh, Hasselbank might get here before Schmeichel. Goal from Leeds United! Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank!
He had a natural ability to hit a ball very hard, and he had so much power. And when he controlled that power, he was quite unstoppable.
We just realised we'd stumbled on a talent.
He's got that confidence about himself to be able to put himself out there. He wasn't shy from the get-go. We kind of made a good little pairing.
A club that I really, really liked. A city where I really, really enjoyed living. Where I've made now lots of friends. I really wanted to stay at Leeds.
Jimmy wasn't sort of shy at making his feelings clear on the QT, and I remember with
Sky Business sponsors this report.
Gavin, thanks very much indeed. That was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's papers in the press preview. After the break, I'll be joined by political journalist Theo Usherwood and journalist and broadcaster Carolyn Quinn. Among the stories we'll be chatting about this on the front of The Guardian. Their headline, drug better than aspirin at preventing heart attacks. We'll be right back.